This is incredible. Just the other day I published this new video for the Viltrox 56mm for the Fuji system and showcasing it against the Fuji 56mm f1.2 and how bad the Fuji lens was performing and such. Well, pretty much the same day the new update for the Fujifilm X-T3 came out. I was a little hesitant to jump on the hype train just yet because it said, okay, it's going to be a faster autofocus from 60 milliseconds to 20 milliseconds, and I couldn't really put that into a relation of a real-world performance. It sounded to me like, ah, well, a few milliseconds here and there, who really cares? Boy, was I wrong. Tested it out just today with the Viltrox lens I was just speaking about the other day, and again with the Fuji 56, which is usually a very slow lens and not really recommendable for autofocus and video. What a difference. This is like, the X-T3 is pretty much like a new camera right now. So the actual speed in real life is like pretty good. You can see here the Viltrox, as in my review before, performs solid. The focus is locked on reliably, even when she turns the back to the camera. Follows well, until a certain point, of course. We are in face tracking here. So as long as there's a face being tracked, the Viltrox is reliable. Switching over to the Fuji, that I like to bash for video autofocus most of the time, but this face tracking with the Fuji now, as soon as it finds the face with the new firmware, this is looking steady and well. Look at this. I mean, what a nice picture, by the way, with the wide open aperture. Lovely. And the focus is not quite as reliable as with the Viltrox. Sometimes when there's distractions in the image, like this other woman passing by, or sometimes not finding the face, for example, the 56mm Fuji struggles here and there, but by far not as much anymore as with the older firmware. This is very usable, and I would say once it's locked on, same as with the Viltrox, it's fine. In Fujifilm's update notes, it says now this puts the X-T3 up to par with the autofocus performance of the X-T4. This makes the X-T3 one of the best bargains out there right now in terms of value for money. I have a travel vlog video on my channel where I took the X-T3 and the Sony a7 III, and I was super happy with the autofocus of the X-T3 because I had the kit lens, the 18 to 55mm with me, which performed really nicely, even with the older firmware on the X-T3, and I was very happy with it. But soon I realized it's heavily dependent on the lenses on the Fuji system, how your autofocus in video may perform. I have the Fujinon 23 1.4 here, which is also one of the very slow older lenses for the system, usually just great in photography, but as soon as you needed them for video, they might be very sluggish to focus, and seemingly all those older lenses now totally got revived. You can hear it, you can see it a little bit. This is an older lens, it's grinding for focus. But the new firmware, turning this old lens into a video workhorse. The newer lenses had no real issue with the autofocus most of the time, they were very reliable. But now the eye and the face tracking seems even stickier and working better with the new firmware. I'm using the 35f2, for example, in this darker setting purposefully, and it's tracking me a-okay. I can see nothing wrong, it's tracking my eye wherever I move. And I would consider this very usable now for a typical, interview setting, headshots, that kind of thing. Because this new autofocus algorithm seems to catch the focus even down to -7 EV, which is like pretty much a near dark image, very underexposed, and it will still be able to lock the focus. I will happily try this with all the other lenses that I own for the Fuji system, but for now I'm just happy to report that this feels like a totally new camera, and this is why many people love Fujifilm so much, because they tend to not forget the cameras of the former generation and sometimes even the generation before that, and they push some nice updates from time to time, turning your older camera into a very powerful newer camera. It's pretty rare for camera companies these days. Other manufacturers, not calling any names here, they will make you buy a newer camera to enjoy the latest features.